Hey, it's Paul from howtoplaybassdotcom. In today's lesson we're going to look at some things we can take from the cream version of Crossroads so that you can learn them and you can play Crossroads with a band or a blues jam and sound reasonably authentic. Now, Crossroads is a really interesting tune because you can play it in several ways. For example, the cream version is very up-tempo, it's very quick, it's around 135, something like that, beats per minute. But there are much slower versions around. If you go check out the Derek and the Dominoes version from their live album, you'll find that it's much slower. So it can be played in numerous ways. It tends to be played more up-tempo when I've heard it or played at blues jams or by bands, so it is something that will stretch your chops a bit, which is a good thing. The approach we're going to take in this lesson is we're going to, first of all, the easiest way to learn the riff is to just play it through the blues form. So we're going to start out by playing the riff through the entire blues form without much in the way of variations. Then we're going to look at a couple of ways you could play through the verse section, show you some variations. These are based on things that Jack Bruce did in the original Cream version. And then finally we'll look at the kind of thing you could play under a solo section. Now, there's something to say here. In the Cream version, Jack Bruce in the solo sections does a lot of stuff where he suddenly goes up and plays high on the fingerboard, and I believe he's doing that partly because he's filling the sonic space that Clapton's vacating when he's soloing. So Clapton's moving up an octave to solo, so Jack Bruce steps up his line, puts it up an octave. So there isn't a big sonic gap between where he's kind of playing and where Clapton's suddenly gone to in the solos. If you're playing in a band scenario where you've got another chordal instrument, a keyboard or another guitar, or maybe even both, you perhaps won't need to do that because they'll remain in that sonic space while the guitarist goes off and solos, or the keyboard solos, whoever's taking the solo. So it is something that you have to just bear in mind with your group situation. If you're in a traditional drums, bass, guitar kind of trio sound, then when the guitar solos, then you are going to have to do something to fill the sound, otherwise there will be a big hole. But I'm assuming most of you aren't, and if you're playing at a blues jam, it's unlikely you're playing in that format. So the 12 bars I'm showing you for the solo kind of work in the environment where there are other chordal instruments that carry on playing while the guitarist is taking a solo. So that's what we're going to look at today. Interesting song, interesting bass line. The complete transcription of Crossroads, I did a complete transcription of this a year or so ago. It's available as a bonus in a course I've put together for people who are starting out on learning the blues, for blues and blues rock. If you want to find out more details about that, there's just a link underneath this video on YouTube. Just click on that and go check and go and have a look at those details, and if that's of interest to you, well, all the details will be there for you. As I say, the transcription for Crossroads is a bonus for that course, and there's lots of interesting stuff. It's one of those master works where you can study it for 6 months and take a very, very great deal of stuff to your practice area, add it to your vocabulary of ideas. So irrespective of whether you get that via the bonus to my course or whether you find it somewhere else and do that study, it's something I highly recommend you do because there's some really, really great ideas. This was when Jack Bruce was at the height of his creative powers, and as I say, it's one of those masterpieces of bass playing that will benefit close and lengthy study. Okay, so that's the intro over. Let's move on to the lesson itself, and what we're going to look at first is just playing through the riff through the blues form. So the first time through, as I said in the intro, to get to grips with this, what we're going to do is we're going to play, as you saw with the play along with the band in a box track, we're going to play through the basic riff in, just follow it through the blues format. with very minor variations to connect up a couple of times. So first bar in A7, so we're going to play A, octave A, G, A, G, A, G, C. Root note locations: the low A, open string, A, 7th fret of the D string, G, 5th fret of the D string, back to A at the 7th fret, back to G, back to A, back to G, down to C, 3rd fret of the A string. So A, G, A, G, A, G, C. So it might be worth practicing that pattern just in A, just on its own. Just getting it down slowly, getting to grips with it. Second bar, it moves up to D, of course. We're going to play a slight variation on the pattern. So what we're going to play is we're going to play D, 5th fret of the A string, octave D, 7th fret of the G string, C at the 5th fret of the G string, back to D at the 7th fret, back to C, back to D, to C, to octave A, 7th fret of the D string. That's what it should sound like. Then we're going to play the pattern in A twice, without variation. Then we're going to play the pattern in D twice, again without variation. Then we're going to play the pattern in A. And then the second time we're going to play the pattern in A, bar 8. We're going to have a slight variation at the end. So instead of going down to C, we're going to go to E, which is the root note of the next chord. That is there played at the 7th fret of the A string. Then we're going to take the pattern and move it up to E. So playing E, octave E, D, E, D, E, D, B. And the notes are low E, or the lower E is the 7th fret of the A string. The octave is the 9th fret of the G string. D at the 7th fret of the G string, back to E, back to D, back to E, back to D, and then down to B at the 9th fret of the D string. And we're going to take the pattern, play it in D, and then play the pattern twice in A. Now, as I said in the intro, I think it's worth learning the pattern like that through the blues form, because Crossroads can be played at different tempo levels. It doesn't have to be really high up tempo like Cream played it. Listen to the Derek and Domino's version, it's more like this. That kind of tempo. So it's almost like 2/3 of the tempo, or even half the tempo, much slower. So it can be played in several different ways, and it's worth knowing that riff and being able to take it through the 12-bar blues progression, because you can always play that and it will work and it will sound okay. What we're going to look at next is a way of playing through the 12 bars, incorporates some of the riff ideas and some other things. It's based on something that Jack Bruce did in his bass line on Crossroads. So let's go and look at the first way that we can look through playing through the 12 bars of Crossroads without using just the riff. Just heard Crossroads, or the 12 bars of Crossroads, a different way of playing through it with Band in a Box backing track, and we'll step through it bar by bar and go through what I played. So the first bar is pretty much as we did before. It's just the basic riff in A, and normally Jack plays that pretty faithfully in the sections on A. Next bar, second bar, is in D. alteration there is those two notes at the end. He's going from G to A, 5th and 7th frets of the D string. So he's just putting in an extra kind of 16th note. Then we play through the pattern in A. Again without variation. Then when we get to D this time, I'm going to play something like this. Which is just going from D to C, 5th and 3rd frets of the A string. So playing D, D, C, D, D, C, D, 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 C, D, D, C, and then you'll be back to the riff. I'm going to play that 2-bar pattern in D again. Then you're back to the riff in A. And notice there on the second time, going to the E7 bar, we're finishing up on the E instead of going back to C on that A chord, E 7th fret of the A string, of course. Then we get up to E, and we're going to play something like this, which is just E, and it's octave, 7th and 9th frets of the A and the G string, and then back to the lower one. And then on the D chord, we're going to start off by going up to F sharp and play that kind of pattern. So we're playing F sharp at the 9th fret of the A string, it's octave at the 11th fret of the G string, back to the F sharp at the 9th fret, then E at the 7th fret of the A string, octave at the 9th fret, D at the 7th fret of the G string, C natural, the 5th fret of the G string, and then we're back into the pattern in A. So that's how we're going to get through. That's one way, slightly different way, some ideas you can throw in some alterations and some variations to the pattern. But notice that Jack plays the first bar in A is faithful. All the bars in A are faithful to what we played through in the first time through, and then the first time through the D bar, D7 bar, he has that slight variation. So his main variations are when he gets to the D7 bars in bars 5 and 6, and he just plays a simple pattern, going from the root to the flat 7, and then in the turnaround in the E7 chord and the D7 chord, he's got some slight variations. But apart from that, if you've learnt the riff thoroughly, that's what he uses, that's what he builds a lot of the lines on in these verses. So let's go and look at another variation of another way you could play through the verse. Heard a second way we're going to play through the verse. Again, some slight variations. Again, we're going to walk through it bar by bar, but again notice, go back and have a listen to that little 12-bar section again. Notice how it's built off the riff, and even the variations are often rhythmic variations of the riff where he's emitting notes, which we'll see in a second. So walk through it bar by bar. The first bar is just the A7 bar, riff in A as normal. Next bar, D7, riff in D. Here's the first variation. In the third bar, we're going to play this. So he's emitting some notes, and then there's a little couple of 16th notes at the end. So he's playing the low A, the octave A again on the offbeat, C on the offbeat, C, A, 16th note. So he gets this kind of figure. And then he jumps straight back up to the octave at the 7th fret and plays 2 A's, a G, an A, and then he plays G on the offbeat, that's the 7th and 5th frets of the G string, and then he gets a C in before he goes up to the D7 chord. And that is almost like a little quote he's thrown in from the bass line for Sunshine of Your Love. Just an interesting little thing there. Okay, so fourth bar we go up to the D7 chord. plays the riff once, and the second time he plays a little variation. So the first time, then the second time. So the second time he plays low D, octave D, C, D, holds that D, plays C on the offbeat, holds that, and then plays A before we go down to A again. So in bar 7 we're back to A7, just plays the riff as normal. In bar 8 we're going to play a little variation of the riff, where what he's done is he's dropped out the third note. So the first 4 notes of the pattern would be, but in the 8th bar what he's done is played, so he's dropped out that G. Everything else is pretty much as the riff, just taking the G out. Then we get to the turnaround on the E7. So we're playing low E or lower E, 7th fret of the A string, octave at the 9th fret of the G string. Then we're going to play 5 more E's at the 7th fret of the A string. And then we're going to play F, that's F natural, the 8th fret of the A string. Then for the D7 chord we're going to start on the F sharp on the 3rd again, play 4 of those at the 9th fret of the A string. Then play 2 Ds, 5th fret, 2 Cs, 3rd fret, and then we're into the last 2 bars of A7 to finish this 12 bar, and we're going to play. And note there's little variations there. So in the first bar, bar 11, we play the first 4 notes as before, and then we're going to play D, C, C, 5th and 3rd frets of the A string, and then the 12th bar we're going to play. So it's low A, octave A, C, C, C sharp, 3rd and 4th frets of the A string. That'll take you then back into the normal riff. There's one more section we're going to look at. We're going to look at the kind of section you could play under a solo, but unlike the Cream version, I'm assuming what happens is Jack Bruce plays a lot of upper register stuff to move into the kind of space that's been vacated by Clapton when he's soloing, but I'm assuming you're not playing in a rock trio, you're playing in a fuller band, and I've generated a fuller band kind of arrangement with even a little solo from Band in a Box. So we'll go and listen to that, and then we'll talk through some ideas that you can incorporate for solo sections. Okay, you just heard the solo section. This is adapted from one of the choruses from the Cream version. Some interesting things going on in this. First of all, note that the format has changed slightly. So in the solo section, instead of going from A7 straight to D7 on bar 2, we've got 4 bars of A7. The other thing is to note that in the turnaround, there's a bar of E7 in the last bar, whereas in the verse turnaround there's 2 bars of A7, finishes the 12 bars. So let's go through bar by bar. The first 3 bars we're going to play a simple kind of variation of the main pattern and repeat that 3 times. So what we're playing is low A, open A, octave A, 7th fret of the D string, G, 5th fret, A, 7th fret, then 2 Ds, 5th fret of the A string, C, 3rd fret of the A string, open A, and just repeat that pattern. So A, G, A, D, D, C, A. Repeat that again. D, D, C, A. Then in the 4th bar, we start off with the same 4 notes, and then there's a really nice pattern which goes over the bar line, where what he's doing, so if we go from bar 4 into bar 5, so it'd be 2, 3, 4. nice little pattern. He's playing open A, octave A, G, A as before. That's being held for an extra eighth note. Then we've got D, C, D, D, C, D, C, D, C, F. C and D, 5th and 7th frets of the G string, F's the 3rd fret of the D string. Then we've got another bar of D7 where he's going to play. So we're playing the basic pattern, which is D, octave D, C, D. The 5th fret for the low D, 7th and 5th frets for the D and the C on the G string, and then he's going from D, hammering to E flat, 7th and 8th frets of the G string, back to D, back to C, 7th and 5th frets, and that hammer on so quick that the ear perceives something interesting going on, but it doesn't really register the dissonance that you get from playing an E flat over a D chord. So a really nice little thing there. And then we're back to A7, and this bar he plays, so it's A, G, A, 7th and 5th frets of the D string, and then E, D, C, 7th, 5th, 3rd frets of the A string, and C, A, 3rd and open string on the A string. And then the second A7 bar, so this is bar 8, we're going to play, which is A, G, A, 5th and 3rd frets of the E string, and then A, C, D, 3rd and 5th fret of the A string for C and D. And then the E7 bar we're going to play. So we're hammering on from D to E, 5th and 7th frets of the A string, playing E again, hammering on again, and then playing octave E and E, 9th and 7th frets of the G and the A strings. We've got a bar of D's in 8th notes. We've got down to bar 11, A7, we're going to play, which is 4 A's, then another A, open E, G, the 3rd fret, open E again, and then the last bar we're going to play, which is E, and it's octave, 7th and 9th frets of the A and the G string. Then we're going to play on that high E, and then we're going to go down and grab the B, open E, and then we're back into the riff again on the next thing. So there's some really interesting ideas there that you can use. You can use some of them in the verse sections as well. I particularly like the thing in the turnaround. That's a really nice idea. I really like the idea in the D7 bar as well, where he went. That's a really nice idea, something that you can use in other sections, doesn't just have to be in the solo. So those are some ideas for you, and what I suggest you do is, if you've got Band in a Box, generate yourself some backing tracks, do some playing along, create some of your own variations. If you don't, try and find a backing track of Crossroads or just a generic blues in A7. Try out some ideas, try out some of your own variations, and listen to the original and note that in the verse sections, the riff on the A7 chord tends to be played by the bass and the guitar pretty consistently, and it's the other bars where you can throw in the variations. So put those together and go and do some experimenting and some playing. This is a great song, and one that if you've got a library of ideas for, then when you go and play it in a live environment, you'll be able to use some of those ideas, and you'll be able to sound authentic but also innovative at the same time. So it's an interesting challenge, an interesting song. There's plenty more that you can learn from the main transcription, which you can, I'm not sure if it's commercially available actually, but as I said in the intro, it's part of the bonus to the course on the blues that I've got. So click the link under the box and go and check that out. And other than that, hope you enjoyed the lesson, and I'll catch you next time.